We have some very special guests with us today from Stride Animal Health. We have Dr. Jimmy Nichols, the Director of Nutrition, and we have Brittany Rahm, a nutrition consultant. And today we're going to be talking about how to balance your horse's nutrition.
And as always, please leave any questions that you might have in the comments there. They're here to answer all of them for you. And at the end of this, we will be giving away a 1-month supply of 101 Diet Balancer to one lucky viewer, one lucky commenter. So make sure you get those comments in there. Tell us hi, tell us where you're viewing from, or most importantly, ask any questions you might have. So with that, Dr. Nichols, we will turn it over to you first.
All right, well, welcome everybody. Doing live events is always a little bit stressful. And for those of you that want a little insider info, we just spent like the last 35 minutes, all of us stressing ourselves out because I'm going to take full responsibility. I think that most of the problems were on my end. So, but we're here and we're good. We're just a touch after 3 o'clock starting, but we made it. So thank you guys for bearing with us. And I'm really excited. Thank you, Valley Vet, for having us. We're Stride Animal Health is the company that we represent. And we just wanted to hop on and have kind of a real conversation about what it looks like to try to balance your horse's diet. There are literally a bajillion supplements out there. I mean, I get catalogs and I look through them and there's like 35 pages of supplements and you get 4 different catalogs from, different companies and it can be really stressful and it can be really overwhelming, and it doesn't have to be. So I'm hoping that after today's session, you guys are going to walk away with a little bit more confidence as far as balancing your horse's diet, and then also in selecting the right supplement for your horse. One thing that people ask me a lot is, does my horse need a supplement? And the answer to that is never black and white, right? It depends. It depends what you're doing with your horse. It depends how old your horse is. It depends whether you're feeding your horse a forage-only diet or whether you have your horse on a concentrate or a feed. It depends on if your horse is dealing with different problems. Do they have arthritis? Are they dealing with gut issues? Do they have specific needs that are outside of what we'd consider just normal, basic nutritional needs? These are all things that go into saying whether or not your horse needs a supplement. So I think one important thing that we need to remember when we're feeding horses, they are designed to eat forage daily, continuously throughout the day. That's how their body is designed, right? If you think years and years and years back, how horses evolved and what they lived on, they were out grazing relatively low quality range or pasture all continuously, like 23 hours a day, right? And we have modernized the horse and we started to introduce things into their diet that they weren't necessarily designed to eat, let's say. So let's take it back, 200 or 300 years from present day. And what were we doing with horses then? We were using them to pull carts and wagons, to plow fields. They were a major means of transportation. Well, when a horse has to work 10, 15 hours a day, they expend a lot of energy and a lot of calories. And when you expend that many calories, forage alone, especially if it's low quality forage, is not going to be enough to meet those energy needs. And so we started to introduce cereal grains into the horse's diet. Well, if you think about that time, the grains that were most popular, the grains that we had access to feed horses, were mostly corn, barley, and oats. And if you think about those 3 grains, the one thing we know about a horse's diet is they need to have higher levels of fiber. That's what is safest for them in their diet. Well, of those 3 cereal grains, of between corn, oats, and barley, oats is the one that has the highest level of fiber. And so it was a very natural choice to start adding oats into the horse's diet to provide those extra calories and provide that extra energy. And that worked really well when that horse was working so hard and expending all of those calories and all of that energy. Well, let's fast forward to present day. Now we have horses that are kept in stalls or small turnouts. They have maybe very limited hours of riding. Okay, so that horse that we used to spend, or that used to work, 10 to 12 to 14 hours a day, now maybe only works an hour a day, right? When we have time to go ride them. And the rest of the day they spend eating, but we still many times are giving them that exact same concentrated grain meal that we gave to them in many years ago when they were working so hard. Well, so if you take something like oats or any kind of a high starch, high calorie type of a high starch feed like that, and you overfeed what they need from a calorie standpoint, you can make a horse pretty excitable or crazy, if you will. So one common question that I get is, does protein make horses hot? And the answer is no, it doesn't. It is the starch and sugars in what you're feeding that make horses hot. Okay, and so the way that I try to relate that to in human terms is, if I were to give my 4-year-old daughter a bottle of Mountain Dew and a Snickers bar and let her eat it all at once right away, and then ask her to either go to bed or go sit through preschool class, right? She's not going to be able to do either of those. She's going to be crazy. She's going to be excitable. She's going to be bouncing off the walls. I mean, she's just going to be flying high, right? She's got this major sugar rush going through her body. Well, that's kind of what happens when you feed, say, an oats diet or a sweet feed diet or something that has a lot of starch and sugar in it to a horse, okay? Where people there was just a little bit of confusion between the protein was, let's take it back in time a little bit. Sweet feeds, again, were kind of the only option to feed to a horse. And many times those sweet feeds would be either, say a 14% or a 10% or 12%. And what would happen is people would say, oh, these horses need more protein, need more nutrients, so we're going to feed this higher protein feed. Well, what they didn't realize is, as they were feeding that higher protein feed, they were feeding more of it. So it wasn't the high protein necessarily that was making those horses get hot and excitable and crazy, right? It was the fact that they were just feeding a really large volume of a really high starch, high sugar feed. So I tell people, if you've got a horse that maybe is a little bit naturally excitable or anxious, one of the better things that you can do is look for a diet that is high in fiber, and then pull your calories from fat sources. Those fat sources are what we call cool calorie energies, or cool energy calories. That means that it's going to give the horse the calories that they need, but it's not going to make their mind or their attitude hot and excitable and crazy. Out of the Stride Animal Health line, we actually have 2 supplements that are high in calories and have a lot of fat. One is a liquid supplement called Shine. It's actually 99% liquid fat. So that's a really easy way to top dress onto whatever you're feeding and get a really good bang for your buck as far as cool energy calories. And then the other product that we have that's really beneficial is called Fish Oil Factor. And that is a 30% fat supplement. And the really nice thing about Fish Oil Factor is it pulls in an amazing ratio of omega-3 fatty acids, which are your really beneficial anti-inflammatory agents. Okay, so Fish Oil Factor has really good levels of 2 omega-3s called EPA and DHA. So if you're looking for both fat, you want that nice shine out of your horse's coat, that's definitely a go-to supplement. Something else that we offer through Stride Animal Health is the opportunity to do free virtual nutrition consults. So like I said earlier, it can be pretty overwhelming to try to select the right supplement for your horse. And so if you go to the strideanimalhealth.com website, there's actually a tab on there called resources, and you can go to nutrition consults, and you can submit a nutrition consult request for your horse. And Brittany is actually one of the consultants that heads up those virtual nutrition consults. So I want to turn it over to her for a second and let her just kind of explain what that is all about.
Hello, everyone, and thanks, Jimmy. So our nutrition consults, basically you put in your contact information if you'd rather be contacted via phone or email. We're going to ask a little bit about your horse, the energy, activity level, travel frequency, where the environment is that the horse lives. Is it stalled, dry lotted, pasture, combination? All those factors kind of play a role in us helping guide you. And then what your current feed program is, what your current supplement program is, and then your hay type. And then from there, if you offer, free choice hay 24/7 or, alfalfa in the morning, grass hay at night, that kind of thing, put all those details in there for us. And then we will send that over to either a consultant that might be in your area. If there is not a consultant in your area, then they'll be directed to me. And then, of course, I have Dr. Nichols as my backup if you have a pretty hard case. So from there, then we can direct you and help guide you to possibly consolidate your program and figure out what the best need is for your horse.
Perfect.
That sounds great. Are you ladies ready for some questions?
Let's do it.
Okay. The first one we had here, Cheryl asks, what is good for a coming 4-year-old who is very energetic and has SI pain issues?
Okay. So let's address the energetic standpoint first. Rather than tell you what to feed, I'm going to tell you what not to feed. You want to avoid really high starch feeds. So when I say high starch feeds, what I want you to look for on your feed tag is the NSC, which is the combination of starch plus sugar. So NSC stands for non-structural carbohydrates, and you get to that number just by adding the starch level that's on the feed tag to the sugar level. So kind of as a general rule of thumb, when I say a low starch feed, I'm just talking generally anything that's that 22% NSC or less. So that means if you were to add the starch and the sugar together, that number shouldn't be over 22. You want it to be under that. Now, the caveat there, just so that I don't get anybody confused here, if you have a horse that has a medical sensitivity, okay, so if you've got, a horse with Cushing's or laminitis or equine metabolic syndrome, the medical sensitivity level to sugar, you need to make sure that your NSC is under 12%, so 12%. But if you have just a normal horse with no major issues and you're just trying to kind of manage their excitability level, using a low starch feed that's 22% or less is completely reasonable. Now, to address the question about SI pain, first of all, definitely get with your veterinarian, use chiropractic, use acupuncture, take all of those type of means. Obviously nutrition alone can't, manipulate the body to that kind of a level, but it certainly can help from an anti-inflammatory standpoint. So there are 2 supplements that can actually be really beneficial for a horse that's dealing with some back pain like that. So Rewind is one of them. Rewind it contains the New Zealand green-lipped mussel. So the scientific name for that is Perna canaliculus. And the green-lipped mussel is really potent in a specific omega-3 called ETA. And what's unique about ETA is that it's been researched on its ability to actually reduce pain that's associated with arthritis, osteoarthritis. In the equine research, it's been shown to improve stride length, range of motion. And then in human research, it's actually been shown to be as effective as people who have taken things like ibuprofen or aspirin to manage some of that chronic pain. So the nice thing about Rewind is it's natural, so it's not going to be damaging to the body in the way that your typical NSAIDs would if you have to use them over long periods of time. So Rewind is, it basically what it does is it helps the body manage the inflammatory cascade. And so if the body can manage and clear that inflammation more effectively on its own, there's going to be less pain that's associated in those particular joints. So I like to use Rewind anytime that you've got inflammation, pain, or arthritis involved in any kind of a joint, and anytime that I'm trying to help the body manage inflammation within joints. And then, like I mentioned earlier, again, from a total body anti-inflammatory standpoint, fish oil factor and the omega-3s that are involved in it are highly effective. So Rewind and fish oil factor, from a supplement standpoint, is where I'd go for a horse that's dealing with some level of SI pain.
Okay, Rose had a question. How should I feed my 12-year-old horse who is in training 4 days a week? I don't want more energy. She said he gets 4 cups of grain a day. He has too much energy.
Okay, so what I would first want to know or need to know is, what does his body condition look like? So if he's holding good body condition and he's not underweight in any way, then I would try to keep him on essentially a forage-only diet, and then use a ration balancer, diet balancer to come back and make sure that you're satisfying the needs for trace minerals and for vitamins. So the nice thing is since he is 4, he's past that really intense growth phase. So you would manage him more like a mature horse from a nutritional standpoint. Now, if he is underweight and you need to get a little bit more body condition on him, you'd want to lean on feeds that, again, are low in non-structural carbohydrates, so low in starch and sugars. And then you'd really want to lean on feeds that have a dense feeding rate, so you don't have to feed a lot of it. And make sure you choose ones that are really high in fat calories. So I particularly would, ideally, in that situation, I would recommend something like Intensify Omega Force. So that's a 4-pound feeding rate to a performance horse. It's low in starch, it's low in sugar, and then it's 12% fat. So it kind of hits all of those areas.
Okay. Rachel asks, how would you decide on giving a horse that is on a forage-only diet between a vitamin mineral supplement and a ration diet balancer?
Okay, yeah. So the terminology between diet balancers, ration balancers, vitamin mineral supplement, all of it gets a little bit gray. And part of that is just because different companies use those terms differently to promote different types of products. But when you get down to the root of what a ration balancer / diet balancer is, so it's the same thing, right? All you're doing is you're trying to provide something very concentrated in vitamins and minerals, and then possibly protein and amino acids to balance what the forage diet lacks. Okay, so let's say we've got a horse that's on a good quality hay, and it's meeting all of the energy and protein needs for that particular horse. You don't need to choose a diet balancer that has extra protein in it, right? If the hay alone is already meeting those needs, there's no reason to pile more on top of it. So in that situation, you'd choose a diet balancer that has vitamins and minerals. So in that situation, 101 diet balancer would be my go-to. Now, if you're looking for something that maybe is a free choice option or a loose type of a mineral option, just a straight vitamin mineral supplement like Element would be a good option. You could offer that free choice to those horses and let them kind of consume at will if you didn't have the ability to feed them on a daily basis. 101 Diet Balancer is going to be a little bit more advanced because the trace mineral program in that is going to contain some very specific single amino acid complex minerals, trace minerals, that have over 250 published peer-reviewed research studies backing their benefits and the efficacy behind them. 101 also contains some amino acids. So if you maybe are feeding a grass hay and you want to make sure that you're providing, hitting your amino acid profile appropriately, a couple of your limiting amino acids are going to be built into that particular ration balancer. Now, there are also balancers out there that have protein built into them on top of the vitamins and minerals. And for those balancers, those have a really good place for operations that maybe have a little less than quality feed, or I'm sorry, hay. So if, let's say you're feeding grass hay and it was cut really late, really mature, and you sent it off for a hay analysis and it came back at maybe 6% crude protein. Okay, that's not going to be enough to meet that horse's needs. So in that situation, if you want to go with a forage-only diet, you're going to need to choose a ration balancer or diet balancer that contains some protein as well in order to make up for what that forage is lacking. But in a general sense, if you're feeding alfalfa, if you're feeding an alfalfa mix, or if you're feeding good quality grass hay, very rarely do you really need that extra protein, and you'd be very fine just to go with a diet balancer that has a lower protein and is really just focused on that vitamin and mineral content.
I have a little suggestion on there. Can you add alfalfa pellets in with that diet balancer without the protein with that grass hay that might be 6%?
Yeah, absolutely. So adding some alfalfa pellets in is a really good trick. So it does a couple things. Number one, it's low in starch and sugar. Okay, so it's high fiber, low starch and sugar. It makes the horse think that they're getting some grain, right? But they're not. They're just really getting more forage. And it's going to give you just a little extra boost on your protein. So, most alfalfa pellets are going to be around 16% crude protein. So if you have, a 6 or a 7 or an 8% protein grass hay, and you need a little bump in your protein content, you can take alfalfa pellets and maybe feed 4 pounds a day of those on top, and then mix that with your diet balancer and make a pretty well balanced program out of that.
Okay. Cole has a question. He said, I hear about horses tying up more all the time. Do you have an opinion as to why this is becoming more prevalent? What products or recommendations do you have to manage a horse's diet that is prone to tying up?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So one thing about tying up is there are different types of it, right? And within the types, we know that some of them definitely have genetic connections. So PSSM, so polysaccharide storage myopathy, type 1 is the one that we probably, understand the most and are most successful with managing nutritionally. If you have a horse that ties up, the biggest thing that you need to do from a management standpoint is keep them off of green grass. Okay, I'm going to repeat that. Keep them off of green grass. And the reason for that is green grass has a lot of sugar in it. Okay. Sugar and starches are what cause that horse to have those tying up issues and those problems. So when we first started this live event, I talked about horses that were being used hard to plow fields, etc. So let's think about draft horses. Those horses would suffer from something called Monday morning sickness. And what that was is those draft horses would be used every single day to work hard, plow fields, pull carts. They would be fed a lot of oats every single day after they were done working as their grain meal to replace calories, replace energy. On Sunday, people wouldn't work. They took the day off, but they still fed those horses the same that they did every other day. Come Monday, those horses would be tied up, okay? So they got high starch, high sugar content, concentrated feed, but they weren't allowed to burn it and use it. And those muscles had a hard time processing that glycogen and that sugar. Okay, so that's what happens with tying up, is the muscles aren't able to properly process sugars. So you definitely want to avoid sugars in your diet. So avoid green grass. And then you want to avoid things like oats, corn, avoid sweet feeds. Basically, look at your feed tag and see what the non-structural carbohydrate content is, and make sure that you're choosing ones that are low. I've had really good success using ones that are anywhere from 15% NSC or less. There are other reasons that horses will tie up. Sometimes they have imbalances in some of the important trace minerals or macro minerals that are in their diet. So sometimes if you add like a metabolic pH balancer back into that, so that would contain electrolytes. So the supplement that I typically recommend in that situation is one called TurboMag BCAA. We've had good success on horses that maybe just suffer from real mild episodes, and it seems like they typically happen in the summer months or when it's really hot or humid. Sometimes those horses are tying up more because of their inability to properly utilize or has a poor balance of certain minerals within the diet. Another product that I really like to use on horses that tie up is one called Moving Up. And that product is really beneficial at basically helping the cellular metabolism of the horse. So it kind of changes the way that the muscles or the cells within the muscles process and metabolize. So again, it's one of those things where I can't just give a generic answer. We would certainly need to work with you one-on-one with your horse and kind of figure out where your real trigger points are to understand how deep we need to go. But definitely keep them off of green grass. Make sure that you're feeding a low starch, low sugar feed. Make sure that you've got a proper balance of your trace minerals, macronutrients, and vitamins. So again, a diet balancer like 101 Diet Balancer would be really good for that. If you've got a little bit more severe situation, I'd lean on TurboMag BCAA, or I would go all the way to Moving Up from a supplement standpoint.
And something that I would like to add in on that is equally as important as diet is also just a little bit of daily exercise, whether it's lunging for 10 minutes, because if you are keeping them off those green pastures and stalled or whatnot, a dry lot would probably be better so they can freely move around, not have access to that green grass. But just like those draft horses that have that one day off, equally as important would be some daily routine exercise as well, slow warm-ups and longer cool downs on those horses as well.
Okay. Cheryl says, I give beet pulp. What else would be good to keep sugar down?
Yeah, so beet pulp is a really good addition to the diet. The reason that it's so good is it provides good calories, good energy, but it doesn't pack a lot of starches and sugars. So it's really safe. The other nice thing about beet pulp is it's what we call an easily fermented fiber. Okay, so that means that the hind gut, the microbes in the hind gut, utilize it really well. And it actually contains components to it that help improve the health of the microbes that are in that hind gut. So beet pulp is a really good addition to those horses that are maybe a little bit harder keepers, really good for senior horses that maybe have a little bit of a difficult time chewing their food or starting to lose teeth. For those horses, you definitely would want to wet it down just a little bit and make a little bit more of a mash out of it so they can chew it easily. But if you're doing a forage diet and then you're adding beet pulp, you definitely, assuming that your hay is good enough quality to meet that horse's basic needs and you're not needing to put more weight on, the only thing really after that you need is to make sure that you have a good diet balancer or, a good trace mineral and vitamin mineral package. So something like the 101 Diet Balancer or Element would be a really good addition to what you're doing with the beet pulp.
Okay, Rose asked, does Nutrina Senior feed have too much sugar?
So too much is a relative term. It really depends on what you're doing with the horse. So like I said, if you've got a horse that's a little bit excitable, then you want to look for feeds that have NSCs that are, a little bit lower. So I generally look for ones that are 22% NSC or less. If you've got a horse, let's say, race horses, for instance, those horses are being worked really hard every day. Those horses are going to need a little bit more starch and a little bit more sugar because they need that extra calorie content. So, I would never just throw any random feed out on the table and say it's good or it's bad. It all depends for your horse. So I encourage you, no matter what you're feeding, to just look at the feed tag and identify what that starch and what that sugar content is, and then decide whether your horse needs, the medical sensitive level, which is 12% or less, or whether you're just looking for that low starch level, which would be, essentially 22% or less.
Okay. Anne says, I have 3 older horses, ages 26, 24, and 30. with Cushing's, and I feed them Bermuda hay, soaked alfalfa pellets, and Safe Choice Special Care. And they are doing well. Is there something else that I should be giving them?
Yeah, so just make sure that whatever feed you are feeding to them, again, back to this whole low starch, low sugar thing, for PPID horses or Cushing's horses, starch and sugar in the diet is really important to help manage. So make sure, now those horses, I would try to use a feed that is under 12% NSC. So that's a situation where you do want to push lower. After that, you want to make sure that you're feeding at recommended levels of the feed. And if you're not, so let's say that particular feed calls for 6 pounds per day. And if you are only feeding those horses 3 pounds per day, that means you're shorting them in those important trace minerals and vitamins. So in that situation, you would want to come back with a diet balancer like 101 or Element to make up those vitamins and minerals that you're missing out on by shorting that feeding rate.
Okay. Lori asked, what do you recommend for a 22-year-old arthritic horse? She moves fine, very hard to pick up back foot due to arthritis in the hips.
Yeah, so when it comes to horses with arthritis, I really like the Rewind product. And the reason for it is just because we've got research that supports it. So there's research, not only in horses, but in humans and in dogs, where it shows that any of those animals that are dealing with arthritis, you've got inflammation, which then leads to pain and leads to stiffness. And so if you can help the body clear that inflammation more naturally or on its own, then that helps remove some of that inflammation that's going to be associated with that pain, and it'll help free them up and help them move a little bit better. I've actually got a situation that, like, for myself. So I actually have had 3 reconstructive knee surgeries from sports injuries, and they may have been horse related, but I have got degenerative arthritis in my knee now. And I have got basically low level inflammation and pain that's in that knee all of the time. And when I ride or when I run or if I'm on airplanes or if I'm driving and my knee is in a bent manner for an extended period of time, I get a lot of pain, and then I walk around pretty terribly after that. And Stride Animal Health actually makes a human capsule of Rewind. So it's the exact same active ingredient that we put in the horse product, but it's made in a human grade facility, and humans can actually take it. And when I am faithful about taking the Rewind every day and stay with it, I never miss a beat as far as my arthritis and my pain in my knee. So, that's one thing to say that there's research to back it, but then it's another to experience it on a personal level. And so I have both. So I really, really believe in that product for any horse that is dealing with chronic pain or arthritis.
We had a couple of questions on how the supplements are given. Do you put them in the grain, or can you top dress them on oats?
Brittany, I'll let you take this question. You're the guru at getting horses to eat supplements.
So we have powdered supplements. The nice thing about some of the powdered supplements is that you can either sprinkle it on the feed. Sometimes you might need to add a little oil or water. Always do it gradually as well if you're introducing anything new into the diet. Something about the powder supplements that you can do is you can also mix them into a syringe and orally dose them if the horse is a picky eater and you really need to administer and get those supplements in the system. And then we do have the pelleted, which seem to be relatively really palatable. We do have samples available that you can order to test for palatability. So powders, pellets, you can add those onto oats. Alfalfa pellets, like she said before, the diet balancer is a pellet. The Element is more of a crumble. The Rewind is a pellet. And then we do have some paste options as well. The ADR paste, which is a mega prebiotic and probiotic paste for some horses while you're traveling and whatnot. So we definitely have a broad range of different types of supplements in different forms.
And I did forget to mention, if you are looking for that vitamin and mineral, or a diet balancer type of a situation, we also do have a powdered diet balancer called Nutrimix Plus. And the really cool part about Nutrimix Plus is it's designed with a mega dose of biotin in it. Okay, so it basically has a 4x level of what the research shows is effective. And so what we have found through clinical use is that when you go to 100 milligrams per day of biotin, you get substantial results as far as the quality and integrity of that hoof growth. So the Nutrimix Plus is a powdered diet balancer, basically, that has that mega dose of biotin in it.
All right. Anne asks, can you give Rewind with Equiox?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I really recommend that combination. I've got a few geriatric horses in my herd for my kids, and they definitely get that combination. It's highly effective, especially for those old horses or those horses that have really severe arthritis or really severe pain issues. Doing the combo of Equiox and Rewind is a really good way to go.
Okay, and then Maria asks, can you feed 2 pounds of Omega Force and add a half of scoop of Diet 101?
Oh, sure. So Omega Force is that very concentrated feed that I was talking about earlier. And, a 4 pound a day feeding rate is the performance level or the recommended rate. So yeah, if you wanted to half dose that, so if you wanted to just feed 2 pounds of Omega Force, you definitely would want to come back on top of that with a half rate of either 101 Diet Balancer or Nutrimix Plus, or you could even use Element. But definitely, if you're going to feed under recommended feeding rates, I highly recommend that you use a diet balancer to balance back out those trace minerals and vitamins.
All right. Caitlin had a question. How do I know if my horse's hay is meeting their basic needs?
Yeah, that's a good question, and an important question to understand. So, one of the first things you can do is that gut check or that visual check, right? Do a body condition assessment of your horse. 2 really easy things to look at even for people who are not trained to do body condition scoring. The first is look at the rib cover. Okay, if you cannot easily see the ribs, but you can easily feel them, if you were to take a flat palm and run it across that horse's ribs, you should be able to easily feel, but not easily see ribs. Okay, that's an ideal condition. The next thing you want to look at is on the top line. Okay, you want the horse's top line to essentially be flat. If that top line, if they could hold water along their spine on a rainy day, then that tells you that they are probably in a little bit of an excess body condition. And if rain were to pour on them and just run off, I mean, if their spine peaks up and it looks kind of like a mountain peak, then that tells you that their body condition is probably a little bit under. So those are 2 things you can look at from a visual standpoint to determine whether or not what you've been doing so far has been effective. But the most concrete, clear and dry thing that you can do is get your hay tested. I really like to send equine analysis or hay analysis for horses off to Equa Analytical. Their website is equa-analytical.com. The reason I like to use them is because they send the reports and the numbers back in numbers that mean something in horse terms. Okay, so things like digestible energy, the calculations are different for horses than they are for dairy cattle or beef cattle or, whatever pigs, whatever species you're dealing with, right? They have different energy calculations. And so Equa Analytical sends the numbers back in a way that is already pre-calculated for horses. So that makes it easy for me and for you to be able to interpret those numbers. But definitely get your hay tested. It's relatively cheap. I mean, I think they have hay analysis packages that run anywhere from $18 up to $96, depending on how many different things that you want to look at. But getting that information is the most important thing that you can do, because forage is the foundation of your diet. It is so important to understand what you're feeding.
Okay. Rhonda wants to know what to look for in a great vitamin E supplement.
Yeah, so it kind of depends on what you're after. So if you have a horse that maybe is dealing with EPM or has neurologic issues, and you really need to push a lot of vitamin E into a horse for a certain reason, then I like to lean on vitamin E supplements that contain the natural form of E. And the reason for that is it's just, you don't have to use as much natural E in order to get the same amount into the horse. Okay, so I think there's a little misconception here. Sometimes people will say that a synthetic vitamin E is not absorbable. That's not true. They are both absorbable. It's just the rate of absorption is different. So it depends on the numbers that you run and how you look at it. But natural E is somewhere between 2 to 3 times easier to absorb than the synthetic form. So if you want to get the same absorption rate into a horse, basically it just means you need to feed a little more of the synthetic. The synthetic, of course, is going to be cheaper. So for those of you that are trying to manage cost, and you're trying to get a certain amount to be absorbed by the horse, you kind of need to balance that line between whether you would rather pay for a supplement that has natural vitamin E that's going to be more absorbable, or if you want to feed synthetic E and just feed the higher rates of it to get that same absorption. I really like a supplement out of the Stride Animal Health line called vitamin EC. The reason I like that is it actually has 2 different, it has the gamma natural form of vitamin E in it, and then it also has vitamin C in it. And vitamin C is a very powerful antioxidant. And when vitamin E and C are used in combination, you can get more beneficial results. I really like the supplement vitamin EC from Stride Animal Health.
All right, we had another question. Is hay plus a ration balancer enough for a horse or pony? I stopped feeding grain last year.
Yep, absolutely. So as long as that horse, as long as that hay is good enough quality to meet the energy and the protein needs, then yes, a diet balancer is all you need. Absolutely.
Okay, here's a question from Dana. What if my feed tag doesn't list the NSC? Does that mean it changes? How do I find out?
Yeah, that's a really good question. There's a lot of feed tags out there that don't list the NSC or don't list the starch or the sugar. Many companies have websites that will do that full listing. So go first to the company's website, like bluebonnetfeeds.com, for instance. There's an actual tab that has the NSC % for every single feed, along with the calories. And a lot of companies that make good quality horse feeds are doing that now. If they don't list it readily available on the website, then it's possible that they could be using some least cost formulation, which means then that number would fluctuate too much for them to feel comfortable putting it on the website. But generally, if you'll call, their support line or their call center customer service line, a lot of times they can give you at least a range of what that NSC generally tests within that feed to help you feel a little bit more comfortable. But again, the companies that are listing it on their feed tag or on the website as a static number are most likely using a locked formula or are setting their formulations to make sure that they don't go over those posted NSC contents.
Okay, Kathleen had a question. How do you feel about power blocks?
I might need some help on what a power block is. Like, would that just be a block with protein in it? I'm just going to wing this one. I'm going to assume that she's talking about either a trace mineral block or a block that has trace minerals and protein in it. How's that sound?
Sure.
Sounds good.
Right.
Okay. So there's a couple things. If you are feeding a trace mineral block, I encourage you to look at the tag and see how much salt is guaranteed in it. One trick, or I don't want to call it a trick, but one thing that often happens is the salt will be guaranteed at 95 to 97 or 98%. And then that means you only have that 2 to 3 or 5% of room left in the formula to actually put all of your trace minerals or your vitamins. Well, that's physically not enough room in order to meet that horse's daily requirement. For a couple of reasons. Number one, not enough room, but number two, that horses just don't really like to lick on blocks very well. Some horses do, but not a lot of them. Horses, their tongues are not as rough as like cattle. So cattle do really well with blocks. I don't know if any of you have ever had a cow like come and wrap their tongue around your fingers. And I mean, their tongues are really rough and really sticky. It's quite an experience. I recommend that you try it. But a horse's tongue is much smoother, and so they're not as good at, you know, getting stuff off of the block or consuming as much of the block as we would want. And so sometimes they'll start using their teeth if they really want it. But with a trace mineral block or a salt block, they're usually not going to get that aggressive. So I generally try to avoid using trace mineral blocks just because I don't feel like you get the value out of the extra cost. So if you're going to feed a block like that, I generally just recommend doing, a plain white salt block. Now, let's move over and talk about like protein tubs, for example. So tubs are generally going to be molasses based. There's going to be a lot of sugar, a lot of molasses in them. And so that is going to make horses really want to go eat them because it's just like this giant candy sucker, right? If it's molasses. Well, so yeah, you're going to have horses that'll stand there all day and lick and lick and lick and eat on that tub, but they're doing it because they want the sugar. One misconception is that these horses are consuming these tubs or blowing through these tubs because they lack some kind of mineral. That's not the case. They're blowing through those tubs because they just found this huge giant sucker in their pasture and they're going to eat as much of it as they can. So, you know, like I said earlier, sugar is not our horse's friend. So I generally try to steer people away from molasses tubs. There are certain situations where they might be beneficial. I mean, if you've got a large band of brood mares or horses that are out, you know, free ranging on a huge pasture, and you physically can't get out there to feed those horses every day, you know, a tub can be beneficial because it is going to provide some of the trace minerals, some of those vitamins, and then also some of the calories and the energy. So again, just keep in mind, I'm talking in generalities here. There's a lot of differences in types of tubs and what the carrier ingredients are and what they're made up with. But, you know, look at the label. That'll tell you a lot. You know, if cane molasses is the first ingredient, then that's a pretty good indication that it's a molasses tub and it's going to have a lot of sugar in it.
You might have mentioned this already, but is the 101 Diet Balancer a powder or pellet?
It is a pellet.
And should you be cautious over the NSC on the 101 Diet Balancer?
Oh, thank you for bringing that up, Brittany. So sometimes if people are trying to manage a diet for NSC content or starch and sugar, a lot of times I'll get the question, you know, what is the NSC in 101 Diet Balancer? The first answer is it's super, super, super low. I don't remember it off the top of my head, but I think it's only like 8% or something. I mean, it's really low. But something to keep in mind when you are dealing with NSC contents is it's all relative to how much of the diet it comprises. So with 101 Diet Balancer, the full feeding rate for a performance horse, like full horse in work, like the highest feeding rate you will ever feed of 101 Diet Balancer is only 200 grams. So even if that 200 grams had 30% NSC in it, it still is less than half of a pound of the horse's entire 24 to 25 pound diet. So it's not, you know, if you do that mathematics, the calculations on that, it's not contributing a significant amount at all. But rest assured, it doesn't have that high of NSC. It's a very low NSC. So it is super safe for anybody that, you know, a horse of any condition that's needing, you know, a low NSC diet. It's completely safe.
Hi, I have another question. Do you recommend anything for ulcers? My TWH gets ulcers easy, and I'm not seeing good results with my current supplement.
Yeah, so there's a new product we actually are just launching it this month. It's called GastroFix, and I'm super excited about it. This particular product has an ingredient in it called lithothamnium, which is basically a red algae, which is a seaweed-derived calcium. It's highly effective at buffering stomach acid, but it also has some research that's been done that shows that it actually helps heal gastric ulcers. So horses that have ulcers and then go on to this particular form of red algae, you can actually improve those ulcer grades or reduce how severe those ulcers are. Now, the next thing that I really like about GastroFix is it actually contains some ingredients that help increase mucilage production. So it increases mucus production, within the GI tract. And what that can do is it can target those ulcers that are really hard to get to and do anything about. So I don't think that many people can appreciate this, but there's not just one kind of ulcer that a horse gets. So if you think about their foregut or in their stomach, you can get squamous ulcers, which are the upper portion. That's the most common. It's the most researched. It's the most talked about. But then horses can also get glandular ulcers, which happen in the bottom portion of the stomach. And then they can actually even get ulcers around the pyloric region, which is the entry into the small intestine. And they can also get duodenal ulcers, which are ulcers that are in that very first part of the small intestine. And so when we put gastrofix together, so it's spelled, fix is spelled Phix. I like that. That's, thanks to Dana. She was the creative one that came up with that name. When you feed gastrofix, not only are you able to buffer that stomach acid and keep it at a more natural pH, but you also have those ingredients that go in and really act as a support mechanism to soothe those ulcers that may be happening in those other regions of the stomach and small intestine. And then it also has ingredients in it that are designed to go in and help improve the health of the epithelial lining. So that's the lining of the GI tract, reduce inflammation, and it also has ingredients that can help support the health of the microbiome that live within the hindgut. So, yes, gastrofix is really targeted towards those horses that deal with gastric ulcers and foregut problems, but you do get this little extra benefit from hindgut health out of it. So I'm really excited about that product. The trials that we've done on it, the results have spoke volumes. The horses respond very quickly to it. I am just over the moon excited for people to get their hands on gastrofix and really start using that on some of these horses.
Cole asks, going into spring grass, what grazing tips do you have and what kind of schedule do you recommend to reintroduce grass every year? How much time do you recommend grazing later in the growing season?
Yeah, so one thing that's important to know about grass is, earlier in the year, it's going to have a lot more sugar, it's going to have a lot more calories, it's going to have a lot more energy, it's going to have a lot more moisture content to it, okay? So when I'm introducing horses to springtime grass, I like to do it just a few hours at a time. So I think not many people realize, but the hindgut or the microbiome in that horse's hindgut can take up to 3 weeks to fully adjust to changes in their forage program or their diet. So go slowly, right? If a horse has been on hay and you pull them immediately off of that hay and you dump them onto spring pasture right away, you set that horse up for a lot of disaster, really. You set them up, if they're prone to tying up, they could have a tying up episode. If they're prone to laminitis, they could have they could founder. And let's say that they don't have any of those things, you're for sure going to get a horse that ends up with loose stool or diarrhea. So I recommend, introducing them just a few hours at a time. Do the best that you can with what your schedule allows. So, try to mix that hay and that pasture time, at least for two weeks is kind of a good rule of thumb to try to mix and transition into that time on the pasture. And then keep in mind, as you move through the summer, when you get towards the end of the summer, so when you're in late August, September, and depending on where you are geographically, but that later summer pasture is going to be a much lower quality. So you're going to be able to, those horses might not maintain as good a body condition in the late summer as they do in the early spring. And the reason for that is because the composition of that grass has changed. So in the late summer, especially if those horses are really starting to overgraze their pastures or their turnout areas, you may have to start supplementing back with some hay in August or September.
Okay, Dana has a question. My horse is overweight and already on ration balancer, but isn't losing enough. Is it risky to find some lower quality hay to feed instead? I'm worried about lignin and impaction colic in lower quality hay.
Okay. Yeah, I know where she's going with that. So a lot of times what happens is, especially like with quarter horses, for instance, some of them are just really easy keepers. And so, you put them on a good quality grass hay and you feed them a diet balancer and they still are overweight. So the next step is to reduce that quality of hay, which for some people can be really, really scary. So one thing that you typically want to look at when you're looking at hay is make sure you get a forage analysis so you know what you're dealing with. So you want to try to pull down some of the calories, but you want to make sure that you don't end up with something that has just a ton of lignin or a really high what is called NDF value. So basically what lignin or what NDF tells us is how much of that hay is non-digestible. And so what happens is as hay mature or as grass matures, the lignin in it starts to increase. Lignin is what gives the grass the structural ability to stand up. It's what makes the stems thick. It's what makes them, stiff. Well, that lignin is not digestible to a horse. And so a lot of times if you're feeding a low quality hay that has a really high NDF value and a high lignin content, then you've got a lot of bulk in that horse's diet that they can't digest. So usually what happens is they end up just like with a big hay belly, right? Because they just have all this bulky fiber that they can't process. But the other thing that can happen is if that hay has a really low dry matter content, and then let's say that horse, it's winter time and that horse decides that it doesn't want to drink the icy water and it starts to get slightly dehydrated. And then let's say that the grass hay that you're feeding happens to be coastal hay that's really fine stemmed. Okay, that all those combination of things can set that horse up for impaction colic. Some horses are going to be a little bit more susceptible to it than others. So if you have a horse that tends to colic in the winter months or when they're on hay diets, or if you're just a little bit worried about the quality of the hay that you're feeding, you can put a supplement called the TurboMag BCAA, which is one I mentioned earlier. The TurboMag it's a metabolic pH balancer. It also helps pull fluids back into the digestive tract, and it helps keep that forage kind of loosened up and broken up and moving more freely. And it also encourages that horse to drink more so that they don't end up with too much dry matter in their diet and they keep that digestion moving more freely. So yeah, so Dana, to answer your question, yes, you need to look at a little bit lower quality hay. I know that that's hard to do. Definitely get a forage analysis so you know what you're dealing with from an NDF standpoint and a lignin standpoint. And then I would definitely encourage you to incorporate TurboMag into that horse's diet just to encourage drinking and help prevent the chance of any kind of impaction colic that could happen.
All right, we're going to wrap it up.
I think so. I think we're coming up on an hour and we still have a few questions rolling in. If you have any more questions, please ask them. I think maybe we could twist Dr. Nichols' arm and Brittany's arm to help us out maybe with those.
Yeah, and if we don't get to your questions, again, just go on to the Stride Animal Health website and click the Nutrition Consult tab, put in all your useful information for us, and then we can definitely evaluate your program and recommend the right supplement and possible any hay changes, any environmental changes that can help benefit your horse in the issue you're dealing with.
Perfect.
All right, we're going to go ahead and draw a winner for a month's supply of 101 Diet Balancer. So the winner is Ann Pelletier. Congratulations. All over.
It is. We want to thank you, Dr. Nichols, and thank you, Brittany, both of you for coming on here with us and answering all these questions. This was a great segment. We had a ton of questions come in. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
You're welcome. Thanks for having us.
You guys. And we will be back on here Tuesday live with Colostrix. So make sure you join us then. And also, we wanted to remind you that our Lucky 7 sweepstakes is going on now, so get signed up. The deadline for this is February 26th, and there's a little something for every animal in there. So check that out. Thank you guys so much again, and we'll see you later, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.